The sharp cry of a child echoed through the luxurious Belleville bakery in the heart of Beverly Hills, interrupting the elegant murmur of customers savoring their imported coffees in porcelain cups. All eyes turned to the counter, where a man in an impeccable suit firmly held the arm of a small girl trying to escape, while another identical child cried silently beside her. "Call security! These little thieves were trying to steal bread!" shouted the bakery manager, a thin man with a pointed nose and a thin moustache, who was tightly gripping the little girl's arm. "We weren't stealing, we wanted to trade," protested the girl being held, her blue eyes sparking with indignation as she tried to break free. Michael Reynolds observed the scene from his table in the corner, where he was about to sign a contract to acquire another company for his empire. The Mont Blanc pen hung suspended in the air while his penetrating eyes studied the two children. Identical twins, no more than 6 years old, with tangled blonde hair and faded dresses that must have been pretty once. The girl who was protesting had a defiant posture, even while being held by the manager. The other seemed smaller, more fragile, hugging a worn children's shoe to her chest as if it were a treasure. "Please, sir, it's our mum's shoe," whispered the second girl, extending the footwear with trembling hands. "She said it was special. Can we trade it for bread?" The manager let out a scornful laugh. "This is a gourmet bakery, not a thrift store. Get out before I call the police." It was at that moment that Michael felt something break inside him, a barrier he had kept intact for decades. He rose abruptly, spilling coffee on the $60 million contract, and walked toward the counter with firm steps that echoed on the Italian marble floor. "Release the girl. Now," he ordered, in a voice that admitted no argument. The manager recognized him immediately. Michael Reynolds, owner of Reynolds Investments, one of the richest men in America, frequently on the covers of Time and Forbes. His face paled as he released the child's arm. "Mr. Reynolds, I apologize, but these girls were—" "They were offering payment for what they wanted," interrupted Michael, positioning himself between the children and the manager. "Something many adults in here wouldn't have the courage to do if they were starving." He turned to the girls, kneeling to be at their height, ignoring the fact that his $20,000 Italian suit now touched the floor. Up close, he noticed almost imperceptible freckles on their small noses, and despite their worn clothes, a dignity in the more determined girl's gaze that was strangely familiar to him. "What are your names?" he asked, with a gentleness that surprised even himself. The girl holding the shoe answered first, in an almost inaudible voice. "I'm Emily." "And I'm Sarah," completed the other, still in a defensive position, placing herself slightly in front of her. "Sister, we're not thieves." Michael felt a pang in his chest. He knew that look, that posture. It was the same one he had adopted so many times when he was just a boy at the Hope Orphanage in Brooklyn, before running away at 14 to try his luck on the streets of New York. "I know you're not," he answered calmly. "Where is your mother?" The twins exchanged a quick glance that contained a silent communication, the result of years sharing not just the same face, but the same secrets. "Our mum is sleeping," answered Sarah, raising her chin. "For 3 days. Emily began to cry silently. We tried to wake her up, but she won't wake up, and we're hungry." The silence that fell over the bakery was so dense that one could hear the buzzing of the espresso machine in the background. Michael felt the world around him disappear, the curious customers, the embarrassed manager, the confused lawyer at the table with the stained contract. At that moment, there were only him and those two girls, united by a truth that transcended any rational explanation. And for the first time in 2 decades, Michael Reynolds, the man who had built an empire from nothing and who lived surrounded by literal and metaphorical walls, made a purely instinctive decision. "Can you take me to her? Have you ever wondered how you would react if you encountered 2 abandoned children offering the only object of value they possess in exchange for food? Would you ignore the situation because it's not your problem? Or would you feel the urge to intervene even if it meant completely altering the course of your life? Outside the bakery, the sky of Los Angeles was beginning to darken, announcing one of those summer storms that transform streets into rivers. People ran hurriedly, protecting themselves as best they could, inadvertently ignoring three figures walking against the current. A man in a suit holding the hands of two identical little girls, while a bag with still warm bread swung from his wrist. 16 hours before that encounter at the Belleville Bakery, Michael Reynolds was sitting in the triple penthouse of his apartment in Manhattan, contemplating the city he had conquered. New York stretched beneath his feet like a carpet of lights that he observed through floor-to-ceiling windows, while absently twirling the whiskey in his glass. At 42, Michael had built an empire valued at billions of dollars, from the small rented office on Wall Street where he started trading stocks with borrowed money to Reynolds Investments, which now occupied an entire skyscraper in the heart of the financial district. The media called him the Midas of Wall Street, the man with the golden touch who transformed failing companies into lucrative powerhouses. What nobody knew, besides his lawyer and longtime friend James Wilson, was that Michael Edward Reynolds hadn't always had that name. Until he was 14, he was just Mike from Hope Orphanage, a skinny, astute boy who learned too early to defend himself. The only sounds in the spacious apartment were the tinkling of ice cubes in his glass and the occasional beep of messages on his phone. Another deal closed, another company acquired, a few more millions added to his fortune. Michael observed his reflection in the window glass, the well-cut black hair beginning to show grey strands at the temples, the square jaw, the penetrating green eyes that rarely smiled, even when his lips did. "Congratulations, Mike," he murmured to himself ironically. "You conquered all this, and yet you still dine alone on a Wednesday night." His phone rang again, not a message, but a call. James's number flashed on the screen. He answered with a sigh. "James, it's past 11. What happened?" "The offer for Thompson & Sons was accepted," came the enthusiastic voice from the other end. "They lowered it to 60 million, exactly as you predicted they would. We'll sign tomorrow at the Belleville Bakery, as you requested." Michael allowed himself a small smile. The bakery was one of his small pleasures, perhaps the only place where he still remembered the boy he once was, who dreamed of the day when he could enter establishments like that without being thrown out. "Great. We'll meet there at 3, he replied, ending the call without goodbyes, as was his custom. He looked back at the city, thinking about Thompson & Sons, a traditional children's shoe factory with more than 80 years of history, now on the verge of bankruptcy thanks to the disastrous management of the family's third generation. Michael planned to restructure it, modernize production, and probably transfer the factory to the south, where costs would be lower. Efficient, practical, profitable, like all his decisions. As he headed to his bedroom, he passed through the only corridor in his apartment that contained personal objects, a wall with carefully framed pictures. They weren't valuable works of art, like those decorating the rest of the property. They were newspaper clippings documenting his rise, the first major acquisition, the company's IPO, the Time cover, the Businessman of the Year award. And at the end of the corridor, in a small acrylic box protected by glass, was a pair of worn children's shoes, the only object he had brought from the orphanage. Shoes that were never his, but that once belonged to his mother, according to what the nuns had told him. The only tangible proof that he once had a family. Michael briefly touched the glass, as he did every night before sleeping, fulfilling a ritual that even he didn't completely understand, and continued to his bedroom. At the same moment that Michael was contemplating New York from his luxurious apartment, Emily and Sarah Taylor were huddled under a thin blanket, sharing the only pillow in the small studio apartment in an old building in Queens. "Sarah, will Mom wake up tomorrow?" whispered Emily, her voice choked by contained tears. Sarah hugged her sister more tightly, assuming the protective role she had naturally adopted since they could remember. Although they were identical twins, with the same blonde hair and blue eyes, inherited from the Swedish father they never knew, their personalities were as distinct as day and night. "Of course she will, Emmy. She's just very tired because of her work at the garment factory," she replied, trying to sound confident, though fear tightened her chest. On the other side of the single room, lying on the only bed, was Lisa Taylor, 28 years old, asleep in a slumber that no call from her daughters could interrupt. What the girls didn't understand was that it wasn't exhaustion. It was the effects of severe pneumonia, aggravated by years of exhausting work and precarious living conditions after her Swedish partner returned to his country upon discovering the twin pregnancy. Next to the bed, on the makeshift nightstand made of crates, was a pair of women's shoes, Lisa's only. Ones besides those she used daily for work, shoes that she kept with affection because they had been a gift from her own mother before she passed away. "For when you go to important places," her mother always said. "Sarah, I'm hungry," murmured Emily. Sarah got up silently and went to the small kitchen cabinet. Empty, except for a package of saltine crackers with only 3 crackers left. She divided one in half and brought it to her sister. "Eat slowly to make it last," she instructed, saving the rest for the next day. Emily obeyed, slowly chewing the small piece, while Sarah looked at her motionless mother, feeling a growing desperation that she tried to hide from her sister. It had been almost 3 days since Lisa had gotten up, hadn't spoken, only breathed with difficulty. The food was gone, as was the money, and tomorrow, Sarah knew, they would have to do something. "What are we going to do tomorrow, Sarah?" asked Emily, as if reading her sister's thoughts. Sarah looked at her. Mother's special shoes, the ones she never wore but always said, had been a very important gift. An idea began to form in her mind. "Tomorrow we're going to get food, Emmy. I promise. Have you ever found yourself having to take on responsibilities much greater than your age? What would it be like to be just 6 years old and need to care not only for yourself, but also for someone you love, without having any adults to help?" The 2 girls fell asleep, embracing each other, while the rain began to fall lightly on the rooftops of New York, unaware that on the other side of the city a lonely man was contemplating the same cloudy sky, equally unconscious of how their lives would intertwine in the next few hours. The rain transformed the streets of Queens into slippery labyrinths as Michael's car, a black Range Rover with bulletproof windows, advanced slowly following Sarah's instructions. The driver, Robert, cast worried glances through the rearview mirror, clearly uncomfortable with the situation and with the presence of the 2 shabby children in the back seat, next to his always impeccable boss. "It's in that yellow building, sir," pointed Sarah seriously, while Emily clung firmly to the bag of bread, as if it were the most precious asset in the world. Michael observed the building, an old 4-story structure with peeling paint and a narrow entrance protected by a rusty gate. He remembered places like this from his childhood, not from the orphanage, which was at least clean and organized, but from the tenements where he lived during the first years after running away. "You live here with your mother?" he asked softly, trying not to show concern. "On the 4th floor?" replied Sarah. "No elevator," she added with a strange pride, like someone who masters an adult skill. "Robert, wait in the car," instructed Michael, opening the door. "Let's go, girls." The building smelled of mold and food being prepared in various apartments. The narrow stairs were poorly illuminated by low-power bulbs, some flickering, others completely burned out. Sarah climbed with the confidence of someone who knows each step, while Emily clung to the railing, occasionally looking back to make sure the tall man in the suit was still following them. "You're rich, aren't you?" Emily suddenly asked in the middle of the staircase between the 2nd and 3rd floor. The question caught Michael by surprise, not so much for the content, but for the childish frankness with which it was asked. "I have enough money," he answered cautiously. "Why?" "Because only rich people ride in those big black cars," explained Emily. "Like in the movies. And your clothes look like they belong to important people." Michael smiled discreetly. "And what do you know about important people?" "Our mom sews clothes for important people," intervened Sarah, with a slightly defensive tone. "She works at Mrs. Nancy's garment factory, which makes clothes for fancy stores in Manhattan." Michael nodded, feeling a pang of admiration for the dignity with which the girl spoke of her mother. They finally reached the 4th floor, where Sarah stopped in front of a simple wooden door with the number 42 hand-painted. "It's here," she said, looking for something in her dress pocket. She took out a key attached to a cord that she carried hidden under her clothes. "Mom gave me this key for emergencies." The door opened to a single room, no larger than the dining room in Michael's apartment. A space that simultaneously served as bedroom, living room and kitchen, with a small bathroom in the corner. Everything was meticulously clean and organized, despite the evident poverty. A young woman lay on the only bed, motionless. Michael approached cautiously, while the girls ran to their mother's side. The woman, who appeared to be no more than 30 years old, was pale, with slightly bluish lips, and was breathing with visible difficulty. Even in this state, it was possible to see the resemblance to her daughter's, the same blonde hair, now stuck to her forehead by fever. "Mommy, we brought bread," said Emily, placing the bag next to the bed. "And a rich man came to help." Michael touched the woman's forehead. It was burning with fever. Years of survival on the streets had taught him to recognize signs of serious illness. "She needs a hospital. Now," he declared, already taking the phone from his pocket. "No!" exclaimed Sarah, pulling his arm with surprising strength for such a small child. "If they take her, they'll take us too. They'll separate me and Emily." Michael stared into the blue eyes full of fear and distrust. He knew this fear well, the same he felt when at 8 years old his older brother was adopted, leaving him alone at the orphanage. The separation he swore he would never allow to happen to anyone else. "Nobody is going to separate you," he stated, with a conviction that surprised himself. "I won't let them. But your mother needs doctors, or she will—" He didn't complete the sentence, but saw in Sarah's eyes that she perfectly understood what was at stake. "You promise? Really promise? That they won't separate us?" Michael knelt down, getting to the girl's eye level. "I promise. And I always keep my promises." 15 minutes later, a private ambulance was parked in front of the building, causing a stir among the neighbors. Paramedics quickly climbed the stairs with a stretcher, while Michael organized transportation. With efficiency acquired in years of closing complex deals, he made a series of short and precise calls to Mount Sinai Hospital, securing a private suite, to James, his lawyer, asking him to prepare temporary custody documents, and to his housekeeper, instructing her to prepare 2 rooms for the girls in his apartment. As he watched the stretcher with Lisa being placed in the ambulance, Michael felt Emily holding his hand. With her other hand, she still firmly grasped her mother's shoe that they had tried to trade for bread. "Are you really going to take care of us until Mum gets better?" she asked in such a small voice that Michael had to lean down to hear her. "Yes," he replied simply, surprised by the certainty he felt. "Now we need to go to the hospital with your mother." Sarah, who until then had been observing everything with distrust, finally approached the other side of Michael. She didn't hold his hand, but stayed close enough for him to feel her presence. "You know we don't have money to pay for a hospital, right?" she asked pragmatically. Michael couldn't contain a smile at the child's seriousness. "Don't worry about that. I have enough money, remember?" When the ambulance departed, Michael, Sarah and Emily entered the car that was waiting for them. The contrast between the children in their faded dresses and the luxurious interior of the vehicle didn't go unnoticed by Robert, who raised his eyebrows in a silent question. "To Mount Sinai, Robert," instructed Michael, deliberately ignoring the unspoken question. "Are you surprised by the ease with which children can identify genuine kindness, even in the most unlikely people? What would it be like to have the courage of these girls, trusting a stranger when all other options had been exhausted?" As the car crossed the city, Michael felt the weight of the two girls who were beginning to fall asleep, one on each side. He looked out the window at the lights of New York that were beginning to turn on with nightfall, and realized that for the first time in many years he was no longer alone, and that terrified him more than any billion-dollar negotiation ever had. It was almost 11 in the morning when Jennifer Martinez parked her 2010 Honda Civic in the underground garage of the elegant building in Manhattan. The valet gave a strange look at the old vehicle, clearly out of place among the Porsches and BMWs occupying the reserved spaces. "Good morning," she greeted, handing over the keys with a confident smile. "I have a scheduled meeting with Mr. Reynolds. My name is Jennifer Martinez from Child Protective Services." The valet nodded, a little surprised. Rarely did the penthouse owner receive visits so early, much less from public employees in economy cars. Jennifer adjusted the folder under her arm and checked her appearance in the elevator's reflection. At 32, she exhibited the typical tiredness of someone who dedicated their life to complex and poorly paid causes. Her brown, curly hair was tied in a simple bun, and the navy blue blazer over the white blouse composed her unofficial uniform for occasions that required formality. 15 years working with children in vulnerable situations had given her not only permanent dark circles, but also a refined radar to distinguish who really cared from those who just pretended to care. And today, she would need to use all that experience to evaluate the intentions of the billionaire who, surprisingly, had requested temporary custody of 2 children he had found in a bakery. The private elevator opened directly into the triple penthouse, revealing an apartment that occupied the entire top floor of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of New York. "Ms. Martinez, please come in." The deep voice belonged to a tall man who was approaching. Michael Reynolds wore dress pants and a button-up shirt with sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a more casual version of the figure Jennifer frequently saw in business magazines, but no less intimidating. "Thank you for receiving me, Mr. Reynolds," she replied, extending her hand in a firm handshake. Michael nodded, leading her to the living room. Jennifer immediately noticed the 2 girls sitting on the huge white sofa, looking tiny against the Italian designer furniture. They wore new clothes, simple but good quality dresses, and had their blonde hair freshly brushed, tied in identical braids. They observed the newcomer with distinct expressions, one with open curiosity, the other with clear distrust. "These are Emily and Sarah," introduced Michael. "Girls, this is Ms. Martinez from Child Protective Services. She's come to talk to us about your situation while your mother is in the hospital." "Are you going to take us away?" immediately asked the one who seemed more distrustful. "Sarah," Jennifer presumed, based on the information in the preliminary report. "No, dear. I'm here to ensure that you are well and safe," replied Jennifer with the kindness she reserved for all the children she met in her work. "How is your mother? Do you have news of her?" "Uncle Mike let us talk to her on the hospital phone this morning," replied Emily, her voice animated. "She's still very tired, but she said she's in a beautiful room and that there are doctors taking care of her all the time." Jennifer raised her eyebrows upon hearing the informal nickname, Uncle Mike, used by the child to refer to the billionaire. She turned her gaze to Michael, who seemed slightly embarrassed. "It was their idea," he explained. gesturing for Jennifer to sit in the armchair opposite the children. "Would you like to draw a bit while I talk to Uncle Mike?" suggested Jennifer, taking a small case of colored pencils and a small pad from her bag. The girls readily accepted, spreading out on the carpet a few meters away, while Michael led Jennifer to the closed veranda adjacent, close enough to keep the children in sight, but offering some privacy for the conversation. "Thank you for coming personally, Ms. Martinez. I know the normal procedure would be to take the children to a temporary shelter until their mother recovers," Michael began, offering her a cup of coffee. "Actually, Mr. Reynolds, the normal procedure would be to look for close relatives," corrected Jennifer, accepting the coffee. "The shelter is always our last option. We verified that at the hospital. Lisa Taylor, their mother, has no living family. In the United States, the girl's father returned to Sweden even before their birth and does not maintain contact." Jennifer made some notes. "And what exactly is your interest in this case, Mr. Reynolds? I must say it's quite unusual for someone in your position to request temporary custody of children you just met." Michael observed the twins for a few moments before answering. Sarah was drawing intensely, her tongue appearing at the corner of her mouth in concentration, while Emily alternated between drawing and looking at the adults, smiling whenever she caught someone's gaze. "I grew up in an orphanage, Ms. Martinez," he finally replied, surprising Jennifer with his frankness. "I know what it means to be separated from the only family you have. Those girls have each other and a mother who clearly tried hard to raise them well despite the circumstances. I cannot allow them to be institutionalized if I can offer an alternative." Jennifer studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity, but found only an intensity that she rarely saw in people accustomed to privilege. "The medical report indicates that the mother has severe pneumonia and will be hospitalized for at least 2 weeks, she commented, consulting her notes. "Are you aware that caring for young children requires time and availability? It's not something you can delegate to employees." "I cancelled all my in-person meetings for the next 2 weeks, replied Michael with the same objectivity he would use in a negotiation. "I will work from home. My housekeeper, Mrs. Wilson, has experience with children. She raised 3 children, all adults now, and I've already arranged for a pediatrician to examine them today." Jennifer nodded, genuinely impressed with the efficiency but still cautious. "May I ask why you're doing this, Mr. Reynolds?" "The truth, please. Not the polite answer you think I want to hear." Michael hesitated, a rare moment of vulnerability crossing his usually impassive face. He looked again at the girls, and then fixed his gaze on Jennifer's perceptive brown eyes. "When I saw them at the bakery, offering a shoe in exchange for bread," his voice failed slightly, "I saw myself. The shoe they offered was almost identical to the only object I have from my own mother, a pair of shoes that never fit me, but that I've carried with me since I ran away from the orphanage." Jennifer remained silent, allowing him to continue. "There are things that money can't. Bye, Ms. Martinez. One of them is erasing the past. Another is the feeling of having a purpose beyond accumulating zeros in a bank account." He paused, as if weighing each word. "I'm not applying for permanent adoption. I just want to give them a safe place until their mother recovers and maybe help them have opportunities that I didn't have until I was much older." Jennifer made more notes, her face not revealing how impressed she was with the raw honesty of this man whom the media portrayed as a ruthless business shark. "I understand. And how are you handling the transition? It can't be easy for a man accustomed to living alone." Michael allowed himself a small smile. "Last night was, interesting. I discovered that I don't know how to make braids, and that my storytelling skills are worse than Mommy's, according to the specialized critics." He discreetly pointed to Emily, who was now showing her drawing to Sarah. Jennifer laughed, a genuine sound that softened her features. "That's normal. Children are brutally honest. And at bath time, Sarah determined that I should stay with my back turned while they washed themselves, but that I could help with the shampoo because it's too high to reach. He shook his head, an expression of slight amazement on his face. It's surprising how they've already established clear rules for our coexistence. Children often take control through routines when everything around them is uncertain, explained Jennifer. It's a way for them to feel safe. Michael's cell phone vibrated. He checked it quickly. It's the hospital. Lisa is conscious and spoke with the doctor about the girls. She verbally authorized them to stay with me while she's hospitalized. That makes the process easier, nodded Jennifer, but I'll still need to visit regularly, talk to the girls alone, and assess whether this arrangement is working for all parties. Naturally, agreed Michael, anything to ensure their well-being. Jennifer closed her folder and stood up. One last question, Mr. Reynolds. What happens afterward, when Lisa recovers? Michael seemed genuinely surprised by the question. They go back home with their mother, evidently. And if their home is no longer an option? The apartment where they lived has overdue rent, according to the initial report. Without income during hospitalization, they will probably lose the property. Michael frowned, clearly not having considered this aspect. Then we'll find a solution. I can help with temporary housing until she re-establishes herself financially. Jennifer studied him for another moment. That would be a significant commitment, Mr. Reynolds. I already said I have enough money, he replied simply. And now, apparently, I also have responsibilities. After Jennifer said goodbye to the girls and left, promising to return in 2 days, Michael sat on the sofa, suddenly exhausted. Emily approached, holding a drawing. I made this for you, Uncle Mike, she said, handing him the paper. On it, 3 stick figures, 1 large and 2 small, were holding hands in front of what appeared to be a tall building. It's you, me, and Sarah, she explained, pointing, and this is your tall house. Michael felt something strange in his throat, a knot he wasn't used to feeling. It's very beautiful, Emily, thank you. Sarah, still sitting on the carpet, observed the scene with attentive eyes. Is the lady from Child Services really going to let us stay here? She finally asked. Yes, at least until your mother gets better, confirmed Michael. And if Mum takes a long time to get well? Michael hesitated for only a second. Then we'll stay together for longer. Sarah nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. She returned to her drawing, now with greater concentration. Have you ever felt that an apparently casual encounter completely changed the course of your life? What would it be like to have your perfectly controlled routine interrupted by 2 small children who depend entirely on you? The next day, Michael woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen, a completely strange sound in his normally silent apartment. He found Emily and Sarah sitting at the counter, watching fascinated as Mrs. Wilson, his longtime housekeeper, prepared animal-shaped pancakes. "Good morning, Uncle Mike," exclaimed Emily upon seeing him. "Mrs. Wilson makes pancakes that look like animals." "Good morning," he replied, surprised by the naturalness with which the children seemed to have adapted. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, the bed is soft like a cloud," replied Emily enthusiastically. Sarah, more reserved, only nodded her head, but Michael noticed that she seemed more relaxed than the day before. "You have an important call at 10 o'clock, Mr. Reynolds," reminded Mrs. Wilson, placing a cup of strong coffee in front of him. "About the acquisition of that children's shoe company." Michael had almost forgotten about Thompson and Sons, the business. He was about to close when he found the girls. Suddenly, the acquisition seemed less important than it had 2 days ago. "Thank you, Wilson. I'll take it from the office right here." "Do you work with shoes?" asked Sarah, suddenly interested. "Like my mum's?" Michael felt an idea beginning to form in his mind. "Actually, I'm buying a factory that makes shoes for children." "Like ours?" Emily raised her foot, showing the new sneaker that Wilson had provided to replace the worn footwear. "Similar," confirmed Michael, his business mind now working in a new direction. In fact, I think you two could help me with this today." At 10 o'clock sharp, Michael sat in his office with the two girls at his side, each with a drawing pad and coloured pencils. On the computer screen, the confused expression of James Wilson, his lawyer, was evident. "Michael, the Thompson representatives are waiting. You didn't show up yesterday at the bakery and—" "I had an emergency," interrupted Michael. "But I'm ready to present my final proposal with some modifications." When the video conference began, with the three members of the Thompson family and their lawyers, Michael surprised everyone by completely altering the terms of the agreement. Instead of transferring production to the South, he proposed keeping the factory in New York, renovating it with modern technology. Instead of firing half the employees, he suggested a requalification program. And, to everyone's surprise, he presented the idea of a new line of quality children's shoes at accessible prices, inspired by the concept of one pair bought, one pair donated. For each luxury pair sold, we will donate a pair of equivalent quality to low-income children, he explained. This is not charity, it's market strategy. Today's consumers value companies with social purpose. "And what made you change your approach so drastically?" asked the Thompson patriarch, intrigued. Michael looked at the girls drawing at his side. "Let's say I received specialized consulting on what really matters." At the end of the meeting, with the agreement reformulated and accepted by both parties, James remained on the call, clearly perplexed. "Michael, what happened to you?" "This approach will reduce immediate profit by at least 15%. But it will triple the brand value in 5 years, countered Michael, his business vision still sharp. "And more importantly—" He paused, observing the girls who were now exploring the office. "Bookshelf. Some things are worth more than money, James. I learned that recently." 2 weeks passed quickly. What began as a temporary arrangement was transforming into a routine that none of those involved could have predicted. Michael's apartment, previously a minimalist space worthy of an architecture magazine, now had colourful drawings affixed to the refrigerator, toys carefully organised in a basket in the living room, and even a small aquarium with 2 goldfish, gifts that Michael had bought for the girls after a visit to the mall that should have lasted an hour and extended throughout the afternoon. Jennifer Martinez had made 3 follow-up visits, each confirming what her instincts already told her. Against all odds, the lonely billionaire and the temporary orphan twins had formed a genuine connection. Sarah, initially the most distrustful, now anxiously awaited Michael's return when he needed to leave for unavoidable in-person meetings. Emily, naturally affectionate, had even won over Robert, the always serious driver, who now kept gummy bears in the glove compartment, especially for her. Lisa Taylor was recovering well, but would still need at least 2 more weeks in the hospital, followed by a period of convalescence. She spoke with her daughters daily via video call, always impressed by the stories they told about their new temporary home and Uncle Mike, who had apparently become an important figure in their lives. That Sunday morning, Michael was preparing to take the girls to Central Park, a program that had become part of his weekend routine. He was in the kitchen, packing the sandwiches that Mrs. Wilson had prepared for the picnic, when he heard the doorbell. "I'll get it!" shouted Emily, running to the door before Michael could stop her. "Emily, wait! Don't open without checking who it is," he warned, following her quickly. But Emily had already opened the door, revealing Jennifer Martinez, accompanied by an elegant couple that Michael had never seen before. "Good morning, Emily," smiled Jennifer. "Is Uncle Mike home?" "I'm here," replied Michael, arriving at the door. "Good morning, Jennifer. We weren't expecting your visit today." Jennifer seemed slightly uncomfortable. "Sorry to come without warning, Michael. This is Dr. Thomas Wilson and his wife, Dr. Rachel Wilson. They would like to talk to you about the girls." Michael's instinct immediately sounded an alarm. He greeted the couple with a formal nod and invited, everyone in, while Emily ran to call her sister. In the living room, seated on the white sofas that now sported some grape juice stains that no cleaning had completely removed, Michael observed the couple carefully. Both appeared to be about 40, wore expensive but discreet clothes, and exhibited that kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of privileges. Dr. Wilson is a cardiac surgeon at Mount Sinai, and Dr. Rachel is a pediatrician, explained Jennifer, when everyone was settled. They became aware of the twins' situation and are interested in adopting them, completed Rachel, with a smile that seemed genuinely warm. We've been on the adoption list for almost 3 years, specifically seeking siblings to keep together. But the girls aren't available for adoption, replied Michael immediately, his voice firmer than he intended. They have a mother who is recovering and loves them very much. We understand that, intervened Thomas with a calm voice. Jennifer explained the situation to us. We're not looking to separate a family, Mr. Reynolds. We're offering an option. What kind of option? Asked Michael, feeling a knot forming in his stomach. It was Jennifer who answered. Lisa Taylor will face a long recovery period after hospital discharge. She won't be able to work for at least 3 months, has lost the apartment where they lived, and has no family support network. She expressed concern about how she will care for the girls under these circumstances. I already said I would help with a place for them to stay and financial support until she reestablishes herself, argued Michael. And that's very generous of you, acknowledged Jennifer. But Lisa is concerned about becoming dependent. She's a proud woman, Michael, and she's terrified by the prospect of not being able to offer stability to her daughters. At that moment, Sarah and Emily entered the living room, both dressed for the park outing they had planned. Sarah immediately perceived the tension in the environment and positioned herself protectively beside Emily. Thomas and Rachel are proposing shared custody, continued Jennifer softly. They would offer a stable home for the girls, complete medical coverage through the hospital's plans, and education at good schools. Lisa could see them regularly and would continue being their mother in every sense. We ourselves came from humble origins, added Rachel, now addressing the girls with a gentle smile. We understand the importance of family bonds. We don't want to replace your mother, just help. Michael felt the blood boil in his veins, but maintained his composure, aware of the twins' attentive gazes. We have plans for today, he finally said, standing up. A picnic in the park. Can we continue this conversation another time without the girls present? Jennifer nodded, understanding the cue. Of course. I'm sorry to have interrupted your Sunday. We can schedule a formal meeting tomorrow, with Lisa's presence via video call from the hospital. The Wilson couple said goodbye politely, leaving business cards that Michael accepted mechanically. When the door closed behind them, a heavy silence took over the apartment. Are they going to take us away? Asked Emily in a low voice, her blue eyes filling with tears. Michael immediately knelt to be at the girl's height. No, Emily, nobody's going to take you unless your mother thinks it's best for you. And even then, it would be a decision that we would all discuss together. Sarah, always more insightful, studied Michael's face. But they're doctors. They have a lot of money, like you. And they have normal jobs, not like yours that are just in meetings. Michael felt as if he had been punched. He was so busy worrying about the financial aspect of the situation that he hadn't considered how his lifestyle appeared in the children's eyes, or worse, in the eyes of a family court. Having money doesn't make someone a good father or mother, Sarah, he carefully replied. What matters is love and commitment. And do you love us, Uncle Mike? Asked Emily directly, with the frankness that only children can have. The question caught Michael completely off guard. He looked at the identical faces that in just 2 weeks had become so important in his life. He felt a whirlwind of emotions that he had long kept repressed. Yes, he answered simply, surprised by the ease with which the word came out. I love you both. Very much. Emily immediately threw her arms around his neck, while Sarah observed with bright eyes, a small smile forming at the corner of her mouth. "Then everything is okay," declared Emily with the simple logic of childhood, "because Mom always says that love solves everything." Later that day, as the girls ran across the grass in Central Park, chasing soap bubbles that Michael was blowing, he allowed himself to contemplate how much his life had changed in just 2 weeks. The man who lived exclusively for the next deal, the next million, the next acquisition, now measured the success of his day by the amount of laughter he could draw from 2 6-year-old children. His phone vibrated in his pocket, a message from James about finalizing the contracts for Thompson and Sons. Michael responded quickly and turned his attention back to Sarah, who was now trying to teach Emily how to do somersaults on the grass. "Uncle Mike, look what I can do!" called Emily, trying to imitate her sister, but ending up lying on her back, laughing. Have you ever found yourself choosing between what you always thought you wanted and something new that you discovered to be more important? How do you know which path to follow when both seem right for different reasons? Michael put away his phone and ran to join the girls, completely ignoring the fact that his Italian cashmere sweater now had grass stains. Some things, he was discovering, were simply priceless. The meeting room at Mount Sinai Hospital was prepared for the video conference. At one end of the oval table, Michael waited alone, reviewing documents that James had prepared during the early morning. At the other end, the Wilson couple talked quietly with Jennifer. In the center of the table, a laptop displayed the pale but determined face of Lisa Taylor, connected from the hospital room where she was still recovering. "Thank you all for being here," began Jennifer, assuming her role as mediator. "This meeting aims to discuss the best arrangement for Emily and Sarah while Lisa completes her recovery and re-establishes herself. Everyone here has the same interest, the well-being of the girls." Michael observed Lisa's face on the screen. Even debilitated by illness, it was easy to see from where the twins had inherited their determination. Her blue eyes, identical to her daughter's, showed a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "Mr. Reynolds," said Lisa, her voice still weak, "I can never thank you enough for everything you've done for my daughters. They speak wonders of you in our video calls. Please call me Michael," he asked, "and there's no need for thanks. Your daughters are extraordinary children, and it's because they're extraordinary that we need to ensure the best possible future for them," intervened Thomas Wilson with a soft voice. "Lisa, as doctors, Rachel and I can offer not only financial stability, but also ongoing health care for you and the girls. Access to quality education, extracurricular activities, everything that dedicated parents would like to provide. The Wilson family's apartment has a room already prepared for the twins," added Jennifer, "in the Upper East Side, 10 minutes by car from the hospital where Dr. Rachel works. The girls would have access to excellent schools in the area." Michael perceived the strategy. They were painting a perfect picture, highlighting the normality and stability that the couple could offer, in implicit contrast to his own life as a lonely billionaire. He observed Lisa, seeing the indecision in her face, the maternal desire to provide the best for her daughters at war with the instinct to keep them close. "If I may," interrupted Michael, opening a folder in front of him, "I also have a proposal to present." He slid copies of the documents to Jennifer and the Wilson couple, while digitally sending a copy to Lisa. "This is the acquisition contract for Thompson and Sons, now reformulated as Little Steps, a new brand of children's shoes that combines quality, accessibility, and social responsibility. The factory is being modernized, but will remain in New York. We are keeping all current employees and hiring 50 more people for the expansion." He paused, turning the page. Lisa, I'm offering you the position of production line supervisor, with a salary compatible with the market, extensive health plan for you and your daughters, and flexible hours so you can be present in their lives. There is also a two-bedroom apartment 5 blocks from the factory, in a secure building, which is part of the benefits package. The silence that followed was broken by Rachel Wilson. It's a generous offer, Mr. Reynolds. But with all due respect, Lisa has no administrative experience. Why offer such a position? Michael looked directly at Lisa as he answered. Because she has 6 years of experience in the textile industry, working in all stages of clothing production. Because her skills are transferable to children's shoe production. And mainly, because anyone who managed to raise 2 children like Sarah and Emily, alone and in such difficult circumstances, certainly possesses the qualities I look for in a leader: resilience, creativity, and unwavering commitment to quality. Lisa's eyes shone with unshed tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, replied Michael gently. I'm not asking for an immediate answer. I'm just offering an option that would allow you to maintain your independence while providing security and opportunities for your daughters. Jennifer observed the interaction with professional interest, but also with growing personal admiration. In her almost 2 decades working with child protection, she had rarely witnessed someone of such privilege demonstrate such a level of empathy and genuine understanding. May I ask a question, Michael? Inquired Lisa after a moment. Why are you doing all this? The truth, please. Michael looked at his own hands for a moment, then raised his eyes, meeting her gaze through the screen. Because your daughters taught me in 2 weeks what I didn't learn in decades accumulating wealth. That family isn't just blood or DNA, but the people we choose to love and protect. That success isn't measured by zeros in a bank account, but by the positive impact we cause in others' lives. He paused, taking a deep breath. And because selfishly, I don't want to lose contact with them, or with you when you're recovered. The 3 of you brought something to my life that I didn't even know was missing. The frankness of the confession caught everyone by surprise. Thomas Wilson exchanged a glance with his wife, who nodded slightly. Mr. Reynolds. Michael, said Thomas, our intention was never to create a confrontation. Just like you. We only want the best for the girls. Perhaps there's a solution that serves everyone. Jennifer leaned forward, perceiving an opening for compromise. What kind of solution, Doctor? Wilson, Rachel and I can offer medical support, pediatric follow-up for the twins, and consultations for Lisa during her recovery. Michael offers the employment opportunity and housing. We could form a support network instead of exclusive options. Michael felt the tension beginning to dissipate. That would be ideal, actually. The girls deserve to have as many people who care about them in their lives as possible. And what about legal custody? Asked Jennifer, always practical. It remains entirely with Lisa, evidently, replied Michael. There was never a question about that. Lisa's face on the screen finally relaxed. I think that could work. But I would like to meet Mr. Reynolds in person before making any final decision. So far, I only know him through my daughter's eyes, and although I trust their judgment, I need to form my own opinion. Understandable, agreed Michael. I'll be available whenever you want to talk. I suggest we have a new meeting when Lisa is discharged, proposed Jennifer. Meanwhile, the girls remain under Michael's care, with supervised visits so they can gradually get to know the Wilsons without pressure. Everyone agreed with the plan, and the meeting ended with a very different atmosphere from how it had begun. Michael remained in the room as the others left, a strange feeling of peace settling in his chest. His phone rang. It was Mrs. Wilson, informing him that the girls were anxious to know the result of the meeting. He promised he would be home in half an hour and hung up, smiling at the thought of the reception that awaited him. In 3 weeks, his silent penthouse had transformed into a home. In 3 weeks, the man who had built walls around himself for decades had learned to open doors. And now there was the possibility of building an expanded family, not based on blood or obligation, but on conscious choices of people who wanted the best for each other. 1 month later, a small welcome party was being held in Lisa and the twins' new apartment. The space was cozy and bright, decorated with simple but comfortable furniture that Michael had helped to choose, carefully respecting Lisa's preferences so as not to seem like he was imposing his vision. Emily and Sarah ran excitedly through the apartment, showing every corner to the guests as if it were a palace. Rachel followed them with a camera, documenting the joy of the moment, while Thomas chatted with James about the charitable foundation they were planning to create together, focused on health and education for low-income families. In the kitchen, Michael helped Lisa prepare the table for snacks, a domesticity that surprised them both. "I still can't believe you've never cut a cake before," teased Lisa, observing his careful efforts to make perfectly equal slices. "My culinary talents were limited to dialing restaurants," admitted Michael with a smile. "Your daughters are expanding my horizons in many areas." "Our daughters," corrected Lisa softly. "After everything you've done for them, for us, you've earned the right to be part of their family." Michael felt that familiar knot in his throat. "Thank you," he said simply, realizing that words were inadequate to express the depth of what he felt. "That means more to me than you can imagine." Lisa smiled, that smile that the twins had inherited. "I know our situation isn't conventional. A billionaire, a seamstress, 2 doctors, and 2 6-year-old girls isn't exactly the traditional definition of family. But maybe it's exactly what all these children need, adults willing to put their well-being above social conventions and personal pride." "It's really impressive how you've stayed strong through all this," commented Michael. "Most people would have crumbled." "You too," she replied thoughtfully. "It couldn't have been easy to open your perfectly ordered world to 2 6-year-old children." Michael smiled. "It was the scariest and most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life." They were interrupted by Sarah, who ran into the kitchen. "Uncle Mike, Uncle Thomas wants to take a picture of everyone together. Come on!" In the small patio of the apartment, everyone gathered for the photo. Michael, who normally avoided personal photographs, found himself comfortably positioned between Lisa and Jennifer, with Emily sitting on his shoulders and Sarah balanced in Lisa's arms. Thomas set the camera timer and ran to join the group beside Rachel. "Say family," instructed Rachel. "Family!" Everyone shouted in unison as the flash went off, capturing a moment that none of them could have predicted just a month before. Later that night, after the guests had left and the girls were sleeping in their new room, Michael and Lisa sat on the small balcony sharing a bottle of wine. "The girls asked me today if you're going to marry me," commented Lisa with an amused smile. Michael almost choked on his wine. "They... what?" "Apparently, in their logic, it's the next natural step. You like each other, we get along well, so obviously we should get married and all live together," she explained, laughing softly. The simplicity of children's reasoning. Michael smiled, relaxing. "And what did you answer?" "That adults are complicated and that some bonds are too special to be rushed," she replied honestly. "That you and I are just beginning to really know each other and that we have all the time in the world." "A wise answer," murmured Michael, admiring the way the moonlight illuminated Lisa's delicate features, the same features he saw in the faces of Emily and Sarah. "By the way," continued Lisa, taking something from her pocket, "I brought this from the hospital. I thought you should have it." It was the worn shoe that Emily had tried to trade for bread that day at the bakery, the shoe that had been the catalyst for all the change in Michael's life. "For you to keep with yours," she explained, "as a reminder that sometimes the most important beginnings come disguised as coincidences." Michael accepted the shoe, feeling its weight and significance. You know, for decades I kept my mother's shoes as a reminder of what I lost. Now, this will be a reminder of what I found. The stars shone over New York, a city of contradictions where extreme wealth and poverty coexisted side by side, where strangers could become family, and where a simple shoe could initiate a journey of transformation that no money in the world could buy. In the room next door, Emily and Sarah slept peacefully, finally free from the fear of separation, embraced as they had done since they were babies. In their dreams, there were no billionaires or doctors or social workers, just the family they had helped to create, with the wisdom and love that many adults never managed to achieve. Have you ever reflected on how families are formed not just by blood, but by daily choices of love and commitment? Who are the people in your life that you've chosen as family regardless of biological ties?